This is Nick. Welcome to GOX, Global Intelligence Node. The war has entered a new phase. Over the past few days, Ukraine and Russia have exchanged some of the most powerful strikes we've seen in months. Warehouses, ports, industrial facilities, logistics hubs, and entire cities have become targets. But one question keeps bothering me. Do these spectacular attacks actually change the course of the war, or are they simply feeding a cycle of destruction that leaves civilians paying the highest price? Today I'll examine the latest strikes, separate confirmed facts from political claims, and explain why this growing war of cities may ultimately create consequences far beyond the battlefield. Let's begin. The hottest topic of the past few days has been Ukraine's strike on the enormous Wildberries warehouse complex inside Russia. The footage looked spectacular. Massive flames, columns of smoke stretching across the sky. Exactly the kind of dramatic images that dominate social media. But I still struggle to understand the military purpose of this attack. The Ukrainian military has repeatedly been accused of placing military assets inside civilian areas. According to these claims, the same pattern can now be seen in the city of Lyman. The Azov unit, the same formation that has long been surrounded by controversy over some of its members. Extremist symbolism is reportedly using a monastery as a defensive position. Large numbers of civilians fleeing the fighting have gathered around that monastery. Because of the unwritten rules that often influence this war, Russian forces have generally avoided striking the site. According to these claims, Ukrainian troops use that protection to move into nearby neighborhoods and conduct military operations from there. Supporters of this criticism argue that similar tactics have been used before. They point to missile launchers allegedly deployed inside residential courtyards. They also refer to ammunition and drone storage reportedly located inside Kyiv's Dovzhenko film studio, which was later struck. The same accusations have been made regarding Nova Poshta warehouses, where military equipment was allegedly stored inside large logistics facilities. Supporters of this view argue that these methods are not accidental. They believe they follow a long-established military doctrine designed to place military infrastructure close to civilian populations. Supporters of this argument trace those tactics back to Soviet military doctrine. They claim Soviet security services taught Allied movements around the world to position military assets inside densely populated civilian areas. The logic was straightforward. If American or Israeli forces launched a retaliatory strike, civilians would inevitably be caught in the blast. Those civilian casualties would then generate international outrage, dominate headlines across the Western press, and attract more political support, funding, and international sympathy. According to this interpretation, the strategy proved especially valuable for militant organizations operating in the Middle East. Its supporters argue that the doctrine has survived for decades and continues to influence conflicts today. Nearly every major terrorist organization in the region has been accused of using similar methods. From this perspective, Ukraine has a powerful incentive to present itself as the innocent victim in the eyes of Western audiences. Because Ukraine depends heavily on Western weapons and financial assistance, maintaining public support across Europe and North America is considered strategically essential. As long as Western taxpayers continue backing military aid packages worth billions of euros and dollars, Kyiv can continue financing its defense. At least, from this viewpoint, that strategy serves a military and political purpose. Military facilities are placed near civilian infrastructure. Any resulting destruction generates sympathy abroad. More international aid follows. Whether people are killed in the process is treated as collateral damage. But this is exactly where I reach a different conclusion regarding the strike on the Wildberries warehouse. I simply don't understand what Russia gains from it. Images of burning commercial warehouses or civilian casualties in either country are unlikely to improve Russia's international standing. Instead, they fuel angry reactions on social media and reinforce negative perceptions across much of Europe. That leaves me with one central question. If the claim is that millions of Russian drones were destroyed inside that warehouse, where is the evidence? Ukraine has every right to present proof, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So where are the photographs? Where are the satellite images? Where is the documentation that can actually be examined, verified, challenged, and analyzed? If convincing evidence eventually appears, I'll say so immediately. From a moral standpoint, I believe both military leaderships are capable of treating their own civilian populations with extreme cynicism. I'm not talking about company commanders or field officers. I'm talking about senior generals and political leadership. Russian commanders are just as capable of doing the things Ukrainian officials accuse them of. If military cargo was intentionally transported or stored inside a commercial Wildberries warehouse, then ordinary Russian workers and small business owners would ultimately become the ones paying the price. Those warehouses support tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, of completely ordinary people earning their living through commerce. But if no evidence ever appears, then these dramatic claims amount to little more than propaganda. The images may look impressive. They generate headlines. They dominate social media, but they do not change the course of the war. Meanwhile, Russia responded with a massive wave of strikes. The first major target was a Naftogaz gas production facility in the Kyiv region. According to available reports, the fire there burned even more intensely than the Wildberries warehouse in Moscow. Yet those images attracted almost no international attention. Everyone eagerly shares footage from Moscow. Far fewer people pay attention when similar destruction happens in Kyiv. Despite its enormous historical and cultural importance, the city barely generated the same public reaction. For many observers, it has simply become another day of war. Naftogaz later stated that this marked roughly the 250th Russian strike against the company's infrastructure since the beginning of the year. Taken together, these attacks suggest an increasingly systematic campaign aimed at Ukraine's energy sector that includes gas production facilities, fuel storage sites, and even gasoline stations. Many of those facilities have reportedly been struck repeatedly. At this point, the destruction of several more fuel stations barely makes international headlines. People have grown accustomed to it. What once seemed extraordinary is gradually becoming routine. Many people now barely react to reports that another 2, 3, or even 5 gas stations have been destroyed by Russian drones. For much of the outside world, it has become background noise. Another strike, another fire, another day of war. The Russian Ministry of Defense then announced another large-scale operation. This time, the targets were Ukraine's southern ports, including Odesa and other major maritime terminals. According to Russian reports, missiles struck ships while they were still moored at the docks. The nationality of the crews reportedly made no difference, whether they were Turkish, Mauritanian, Arab, or from somewhere else. The attacks continued. Unlike Russia, Ukraine depends heavily on its maritime trade. Its ports are critical not only for the government or the military, but for the country's economy as a whole. These terminals handle grain exports, imported consumer goods, industrial supplies, and a significant share of Ukraine's international commerce. That creates an important contrast. When Ukraine strikes Russian oil infrastructure, the political leadership in Moscow may suffer economic pressure, but attacks against Ukraine's ports affect the country's broader economy and civilian life. According to Russian claims, 5 cargo ships were damaged during these strikes. 4 bulk carriers were reportedly hit while unloading cargo in the port of Mykolaiv. Another cargo vessel was reportedly struck in the port of Pivdeniai in Odesa region. Secondary explosions followed, suggesting that highly combustible cargo may have been on board. Soon afterward, Russia launched what many Ukrainian observers described as one of the most powerful attacks on Kyiv in recent months. Some residents simply called it hell. Yet by the following morning, images of smoke hanging over Kyiv received far less international attention than the earlier footage from Moscow. The destruction was serious, but public interest appeared noticeably smaller. According to Russian reports, several defense-related facilities were among the targets in Kyiv. One of them was Radionics, an electronics company that manufactures guidance and control systems used in Ukrainian precision weapons. Producing a missile is only part of the challenge. Without sophisticated guidance systems, even the most advanced missile becomes ineffective. Its ability to reach the intended target depends on those electronic components. Russian sources also claimed strikes on Spetsobrunmash and the Artem, Aerospace and Missile Manufacturing Corporation. Explosions were also reported at facilities associated with Kyiv 90, another enterprise connected to Ukraine's aerospace sector. Several industrial sites linked to the legacy of Soviet rocket engineer Sergei Korolev were reportedly affected as well. According to Russian accounts, fires broke out across multiple production areas. Large columns of smoke rose into the sky. Debris scattered across nearby districts. The next reported target was a facility producing components for long-range Ukrainian strike drones. Russian sources claimed the building burned intensely because it contained large quantities of lithium battery packs. Soon afterward, missiles reportedly struck a major Nova Pashta sorting center. According to Russian claims, drone fuselages and other unmanned aerial vehicle components had allegedly been stored inside the warehouse. The attack reportedly destroyed additional robotic systems intended for the Ukrainian military. Another logistics center in Terasivka, located in Kyiv region, was also listed among the reported targets. Russian reports further claimed that fuel storage tanks in the port of Odesa were hit during the same wave of attacks. One Russian military summary even stated that as many as 53 ballistic missiles were launched against Kyiv within less than 1 hour. The footage from those strikes is now circulating widely. Compare those images with the videos from the Wildberries warehouse in Russia. Visually, the scale of destruction appears remarkably similar.